Today is May the 12th, 2014. It is 14:54 hours. Investigator Bailey and Lieutenant Kane. We're going to be interviewing Lieutenant White, badge 078, reference to ops case number 14A-012. And Lieutenant White, I've discussed the employee witness advisory form with you. Is that correct, sir?
Yes,
And
it
you
is.
did sign it as acknowledgement of its contents.
Yes,
Okay, sir, you recall being at the Beaufort City School Board building on April the 28th, 2014?
I do.
Okay, what can you tell me about that evening?
I had earlier in the day I'd spoke to Major Edkin, and he had I think been in touch with Dan Branch from the city of Beaufort, and they were anticipating a large crowd, possibly unruly, in reference to a eminent domain hearing that the school board was going to have regarding seizing some property from the American Legion. And so consequently they anticipated that some of those people might show up and be unfriendly. Well, so I had made arrangements to be there, and Sergeant Wilkerson and I think either Officer Rehack and Officer Floor, there were several of us that were going to be in the area, a couple of us actually in the building, because um, they were concerned. There had been a lot of pre-meeting publicity in the meeting and so forth, and so they were just a little bit anxious about what might happen. About, I think the meeting was supposed to start, I don't remember if it was 6:30 or 7, but Dan Branch called me and he said, come on over, we've got some food, we're going to feed everybody. And I said, okay. So I went over and walked in the back door and walked in the break room, which is right there, and Superintendent Hamby was there, uh, Chairperson Mr. Beard was there, several city officials, members of the school board, and so forth. And they were like, we're glad you're here. Make yourself at home, fix a plate or whatever. And Dan was in and out doing what Dan does, and he said they were, expecting some people, and they were rallying, I guess, across the street. So right about the time I was about to finish eating, I heard some radio traffic about somebody out front. And I thought, that's really strange, because I'm sitting here, and well, as I later found out, um, this is what Dan Branch said, that the Superintendent Hamby wanted to make a 911 call so there'd be official record. And I'm like, I kind of wish you would, have come and said something to me. I could have just put the radio traffic on the air or something, because it makes me look stupid sitting there, and we're getting a 911 call in the building. So anyway, I got rid of my trash, and I walked out front. And when I got outside, I knew at least a couple of folks were already there, because, like I said, we had already had a plan to be there, and there were several people in the area. So when I walked out front, Sergeant Wilkerson and Officer Flora were there, and I believe Officer Novak was there, and a couple of people. I watched several people sequentially talk to the guy and tell him to, he had an open carry, and there was this discussion about whether he could have it there, and so forth. And over a period of time, several people told him that he could not have his weapon there on school property, and that he had several options. He could take his weapon and go out onto the easement where he would not be on school property. He could place his weapon in his vehicle and secure it there, and then he'd be welcome to come inside, or he could just outright leave. But those were his options. It was made very clear to him that those were his choices, and that was done 4, maybe 5 times in my presence. So at some point, I'm not the most patient person in the world, so I said, we're going to put an end to this. He's either going to comply or he's going to get arrested. And so I walked down, I stood there for a second, and I said, look, I told him, I said, you're either going to have to leave, put your weapon up. If you put your weapon up, you're welcome to stay. But if you don't, if you stay here where you are, you're going to get arrested. And he brought out a copy of the Constitution. And I said, look, we're not going to do this. We're not going to discuss this here. Where this is a subject of discussion will be in court. I said, you got 30 seconds to move on. And so he kept talking, wanted to make a debate out of his Second Amendment rights. Finally, I said, all right, you got 10 seconds. And at that point, you can go back and watch the video, he puts his cigarette out, and he turns around and puts his hands behind his back. And I said, okay, this is how it's going to go. Officer Flora came over, put the cuffs on him, arrested him, and probably the only thing that I'm aware of that occurred after that was Flora did have some difficulty with Judge Russell in obtaining the arrest warrant. However, this is not the first time that we've had issues with her. She's a defense attorney. She's very liberally oriented with regarding issuing warrants, things like that. Because at some point I became aware of the fact that Flora had been at magistrate court for an extended period of time, and I asked Officer Wilkerson, I said, what's he doing down there, you know? And so he called him, and then I don't think he got him originally, but after a little bit, Flora called him back and explained that the judge was being very reluctant to issue the warrant. But, you know, as far as we're concerned, you know, he was on a place that somebody had authority over, that being the superintendent of the Beaufort City Schools. That person asked him to leave. He refused, so an arrest was made. And, you know, it was pretty straightforward.
Okay. Sir, in regards to, are you familiar with Officer Flora's original incident report?
I am.
Okay. What can you tell me about the narrative portion of that? Do you recall anything about the narrative?
I read it, yes.
Oh, okay. In regards to that, I know in that portion he lists that it states that I am referring to himself. Was there any? Do you know if any correction was made in regards to that, or?
Well, I should be responsible for this. And I think when it got to Major Edkin, he asked him to rewrite it with additional detail, which my attitude when I originally read it was that this is very simple, this is very straightforward, and this was even before we had seen the video. So, you know, but guy's in a place, he's been asked to leave, he refuses to leave, he's arrested. I don't know how much more simple you can make that. So that's the way I read it, the incident report. He was present during the entire conversation. He was as close as you and I are, probably 4 feet. You know, my take on the original incident report was it was just generic. But again, there wasn't anything complicated about this situation. So I didn't take it as he was misconstruing anything. I didn't take it as he was intentionally omitting any details. Granted, you know, perhaps in hindsight, we could have been more detail oriented, but even once the video came out and you look at the video, you go, that's exactly, I mean, if you read the report, that's what happened. It just didn't have all the names of all the people that were there. And, you know, that I read the report, so I probably should have told him to include additional information.
But in regards to that, Officer Flora did go back and complete a second supplemental.
He did.
Okay.
In fact, I think we all did.
Yes, sir.
No, I mean, so the original statement or the original report that he completed didn't change the charges or anything, didn't change anything that took place.
No, the only thing that I can say there is I've talked to Dr. Hamby, and they were interested in pursuing gun-related charges and things like that. Our take on it was we're going to go with the simplest, most straightforward charge that we have. I mean, to me, I don't see any way that charge isn't valid. I mean, he wasn't asked once or twice, probably 10 times. And while you can, you know, debate and look at the law and you can read the law, and there probably are some other charges which are applicable. The one that we made is the simplest, the cleanest, most straightforward, and that was really what we were looking for, was just to make as little or as few ripples on the pond as possible. But I know I talked to Dr. Hamby, and the Beaufort City Schools are, I think it must be their city attorney or their school board attorney. It's probably the one that's in touch with Ms. Szabo as far as maybe having additional charges brought by accusation. So, and I said, that's great, you know, and, you know, whatever that she's willing to, you know, take forward in prosecution would be fine. I think there's two. There's one that probably after the 1960s, 70s, when they were having a lot of campus college problems and, you know, sit-ins and rallies, the state wrote a law that says if the superintendent says somebody needs to leave school property, then they're required to. And then there's another one regarding having weapons on school property.
But in regards to that location, so that location is known to be the headquarters of the City of Beaufort Schools.
It is the, I'm trying to think of the actual title, because they got a big plaque there, and I remember reading it. But it may be the Beaufort Board of Education.
But it houses the superintendent, school officials, and
Yes,
also.
that's
Yes,
correct.
sir. Okay. Anything else, Lieutenant? You have anything else, Lieutenant?
No, like I said, pretty straightforward.
Yes, sir. Okay, I'm going to end the interview. It is 15:06.